Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about cloud computing. So let's suppose that we have a computer and we are using that computer for different applications, and with this computer we have computing resources with us, like we have CPU, we have hard disk, we have RAM, we have some specific application program. So we are using those resources by sitting on our computer like this. Now, the idea of cloud computing is the availability of these computing resources, specifically processing and storage. And now these resources will be provided by some cloud. So there is some cloud, there is something there, and we are having these all resources from there. For example, if we need some processing power, maybe we are running some simulation programs and we need more processing power, then that processing will be provided us from that cloud. And in the same way, if we need some specific application, then that application will be provided us from that cloud. And even we can be provided with some specific IDE or integrated development environment where we want to develop some application. So that kind of services can also be provided by the cloud. And collectively, these are known as cloud services. And one more thing is that we can access these services, these cloud services, from many different devices. Like we can have handset, we can have tablet, or we can have our own computer, laptop. And maybe we are already using some of the cloud services, like we are using Google Drive. So they are providing us some free storage, and we can save our maybe resume, we can save our documents, we can save our pictures. So up to a certain limit, they are giving us free of cost some storage. And in the same way, we have OneDrive giving us free storage up to a certain limit, and we also have some iCloud Drive. So we have been using, or we are using these free services provided by some of the cloud service provider. And same, the benefit, maybe for example, if I have my documents on my cloud account, maybe on my OneDrive account, and if I go to my university, then I can access those resources. And if I'm at my home, I can access the same resources by using maybe sometimes I can access those resources by my mobile handset. Sometimes I'll be accessing those resources by using maybe tablet, and maybe sometimes laptops. So in this way, these resources are somewhere in the cloud, and I can use many different devices to access those data. That data or those pictures or resume from any device. Now these all are cloud services, but what kind of services can be categorized as cloud services? For that, the National Institute of Standard and Technology has provided us some guidelines or some certain criteria. So I have put a link for that if you're interested. There in the down, you can see there's a Wikipedia link. You can see the further details about that. But now the cloud services are called, or the cloud services must have to satisfy, or they have to satisfy certain criteria. And the criteria is that if a service is as a cloud service, then that service should be available on demand with self-service. So it means if there is some user, and that user is going to demand some of the services from cloud, then cloud should be able to give those services to the user. And then self-service means there is no need of any third person there. It means there is no need of any third person. There should be some display there, and this user should be able to select any of the services from that cloud, and now those services should be available to the user. And the second criteria is that these services should be accessible from many devices using different networks. So these are, for example, many devices, and they can use many different networks, like maybe they can use 5G, they can use maybe some internet services, and then they can scale well. So they can scale well means if the user is going to demand more services, maybe the user required maybe some of the RAM or some of the processing, but in future, if user needs some more services, then the cloud service provider should have enough resources to fulfill the requirement of this user. And then The service provider should maintain a pool of services. So in this way, this will have a pool of services, and the clients, the service provider can give those pools to the users on the demand of that user. And important thing that whatever services have been provided by the cloud, those services should be measurable. Measurable means if the cloud can measure the services used by the client, then there should be some mechanism to maybe to send bills to the client that you use these many services and for that much time, and you need to pay that much amount. So these are the basic characteristics of cloud services. And now there are different cloud service providers in the market, but I have mentioned some of the cloud service provider like IBM Cloud, Google Cloud Platform, AWS, Amazon Web Services, and we also have Oracle Cloud. So these are the cloud service providers in the market. Of course, there are many. Now, yes, these cloud services, these are many cloud services, and they have been categorized in different classification. So what actually a client can have from these cloud service providers, so they all have been classified like the users can have those services in the form of like software as a service, and infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. It means this cloud can give many services to them. Now these services have been classified like this one, and we are going to discuss that what do they mean. First one is software as a service. So in this case, for example, if there is some end user here, so you see we have an end user here, this end user is going to request for some specific software. So for example, it can request for some Microsoft Office 365. So any applications, there is some application there, the user just wants that services for a certain time, and instead of purchasing that those application program maybe for a year, the user can request those services from the cloud, and then cloud service provider can provide that software as a service. So in that software, he will have these all things. It means those application will be running on this cloud, and that cloud will have some hardware, some operating system, and on top of that, it will have those applications. And maybe if the user requested for some games, maybe some email services or Google Drive, so user can be provided with that particular software. And to run that software, the service provider can provide maybe single virtual machine or multiple virtual machines. It means the software is actually is using some of the virtual machine resources, and the service provider can arrange for those virtual machines. And the software provider is responsible for installation, licensing, and maintenance. So all these things has to be done by the service provider, specifically maintenance. The user doesn't have to worry about any problem or anything, because this will be handled by the service provider. So in this way, the user can have a specific software from the cloud service provider, having all these characteristics we discussed before, scalable and everything, and measurable. Second service that can be provided by the service provider is infrastructure as a service. So that infrastructure as a service means, for example, if there is some organization or if there is some network architect, he needs some infrastructure like CPU or some hard disk. So of course this computer also has some CPU or some hard disk, but if it needs more, it's going to plan an office in such a way that it's not going to purchase those all resources for forever. So maybe it needs for some time. So in that case, it can request for that infrastructure from the cloud service provider, and cloud service provider can offer those services. Now specifically say that the cloud service provider can offer him or can give him some hard disk or some CPU or some RAM. So for example, this user only have 2 GB RAM, but this user wants to run some of these simulations or something where he needs maybe 30 GB. So in that case, instead of purchasing that RAM forever, it can request that infrastructure from the service provider, and service provider can provide us these all resources in addition to the operating system. And once the user has this infrastructure, so this including this operating system, the user has this everything. It means not only this 2 GB RAM, but required operating system as well will be there. And then on top of that, the user can install any application he or she wants. So now it has the complete platform, and it can install any application, maybe simulation program or anything which needs extensive resources. So that will be provided by the service provider. And so client receives actually virtual computing resources in this case. Finally is the platform as a service. So in platform, this is, for example, this is very useful for the software developer. So there is some application developer or game developer, he needs a platform, complete platform. So in that case, the user sends a request to the service provider, cloud service provider, and cloud service provider can provide not only the hardware. So this is there, you can see here, this is a RAM, CPU, hard disk, NIC, everything. And it also provides the operating system. But in platform as a service, the service provider also provides the IDE, or the complete development environment required by the software developer. So if we know that in IDE means maybe if the user is going to develop some game or some application program, in that case, of course, it needs hardware, it needs an operating system, but there is some specific IDE where the user can develop some application. And that, for example, in maybe we are familiar with Java programming, that we need this IDE for development. So that complete IDE or that complete environment will be provided by the service provider. So in IDE, we have the related tools required by the programmer to write, test, and debug the code. And this platform as a service supports not this complete life cycle, where we have this building, testing, deploying, managing, and updating the application, any specific application life cycle. So what we do, we not only build it, but we also test that code, and then we deploy that code, and then we update. So these all environment, or this all requirement can be fulfilled by the cloud service provider. So this is the last service which we wanted to discuss regarding cloud computing and cloud computing services. And I hope this discussion was a bit helpful for you, and hope to see you in some other video.